is Christine and I'm on the design team for Arden Creative Studios and Textures as well. And in today's video we're playing around with the Dragonfly Dreams collection from Textures. And when I was doing my samples when this collection launched, I was playing around with this little art journal page, cutting in some of the papers, layering them back on top of each other, using some of the rub-ons on here, some of the PET tape as well. And this side of this page I thought would make a really lovely card, because this journal is actually a very similar size to my favourite size of card anyway. And when I'd sort of laid this out, I was thinking that would make a really lovely card. So it's using some of the PET tape in the background, a scrap of the patterned paper that was actually from this side of the page. So we'll see if we pick another piece from somewhere else, or if I've got another scrap that would work for that. And then I've cut into one of the sentiments that's sort of laser cut within the patterned paper pad and added that on as my sentiment for this sort of half of the journal page. So if you want to see how easy it is to create this style of card, then stay tuned and watch the rest of the video. Okay, so first thing you want to do is take a piece of cardstock that's your favourite size of card. Mine's 10 by 13 centimetres, and I'm using the bright white cardstock from Arden, the A4 stuff that is the smooth on both sides. So I've trimmed that down to my favourite size. Then I have got the PET tape. Now the way this PET tape works, it's kind of like a hybrid almost, because it's got a continuous section on it, but then it also has the kiss cut section of elements on here too. So I was using these continuous sections to do my background for this, but then you end up with a few of these leftovers that just have the kiss cut portions as well. So don't throw those away. A great way of keeping hold of all of them is to like line them all up with their backing tape still on and kind of twist them round and store them inside your reel of PET tape. That's how I found is the easiest way to keep track of all of these lovely little extra pieces that are going to be perfect for more cards. But actually we may even use some of those pieces on this card as well, and I just put them inside the centre there to keep them safe. But yeah, for this card we're mostly using these long sections here. And I'm pretty certain I managed it in 3 on that art journal, and this card is slightly shorter than my art journal. So all I'm going to do is roughly measure this and trim that. Then I'm going to roll off the next section and trim at that perforation point. But this time I'm going to line this up differently. So before I was, sorry, I've got a bit of tape on my finger. Before, I was lining up the first part of that tape. But if we do that again, we're going to have repetition, and you can really tell that it's a repeat. But if you move it across, and this time, cut this section here, and we're going to stick it from this end, and then we'll have this extra piece over here that we can keep, again, in the centre of our roll. We're going to sort of change up the placement of the design, which is brilliant. And then we're going to go again with the front part of this. So again, trim against that little perforation, and then this one is going to line up again using the front part of that tape. So this is going to still be attached to our roll. And even though I've done this twice and I've used plenty of other pieces, we've still got loads left on our roll. I'm not actually sure how many repeats you get of the pattern, but I mean it's got to be at least 20 or more repeats of the pattern around there. There's loads to go around, because this is probably the 6th, 7th and 8th maybe pieces of this that I've already used, and I've still got that much left on my roll. So it's a really lovely way of getting lots of different designs. So now we're going to line up this one with that L that sort of begins on the word, or a word beginning with L, and then the next one we're sort of more using the tail end of the design, and then the next one we're going back to the letter L, or you could move it more to the middle if you wanted to, but you're saving extra little bits of tape if you go with the front end and the back end. Then you've got like a larger section that you can save for using on more of your project as well. You'll have pieces that are sort of this size, and you could use them to create a patchwork kind of effect. You could even, if you wanted this to not be full all over, you could do another one using the offcut pieces and just have a small strip and maybe border it with 2 pieces of patterned paper, or have it all the way off to one side and then have 1 piece of patterned paper bordering it and have a dragonfly on there as well. Let's do that. Let's make 2 cards. then at least you'll be able to see how you can definitely use up those leftover pieces. So I've got 2 leftovers there, and I'm sure there is another small, yes, we've got a few different small leftovers. Which one are we going to need? If we want to line this up without it, you know, looking like the exact same thing lined up again, we could go with either of those. Yeah, any of them, doesn't really matter. They're all sort of different sections of this, so okay, let's go with that one then. Okay, so we're going to work on 2 cards at once. So for our overall background one, we'll take our piece of white cardstock, we'll take one that starts with the letter L, and we'll peel the backing off. So this is how the PET tapes are. They're like a lovely satin matte finish on the front, and then they have a shiny backing piece on them. And then you can stick them down onto your project, like so, and then just burnish them in, like that. Then let's go with the piece that is more of the end portion. That's the actual end of the design, and we cut it off a bit shorter here. And get the backing off of that piece. And I'm going to butt up the edge of the tape to the previous edge. Like so. And then one more piece with the letter L. Now, if we look at this, we can actually see that we're not going to use the last 2 lines of wording on here. So I'm actually going to be very frugal, and I'm going to snip off those last 2 lines of wording so that I'm not wasting it by removing the backing and then it getting stuck to my mat. I can use it then on another project as well. So you can always save all of these extra pieces, whether you do the technique and you roll it up and put it back inside, or whether you just have a little pocket or a pouch or something that you keep all of your leftovers in, ready for the next project. So there we have our complete overall background, and from far away it looks like a complete background. You can still see the joins a little bit, but once you add extra embellishments on here, it's going to disguise that a bit. And then we can flip this over and trim from the back. You can also, obviously because it's tape, you can fold it around and stick it, but I often do trim it off when I'm using such a large amount like this. I find it gives a little bit of a neater result, but you can do it whichever way you want to. So we can just trim those excess pieces off. And then whilst we're sticking down tape, let's get the other one started as well. So we're going to go for a second card that's going to have a panel of writing down the side, and then we're going to have a strip of paper that covers the edge of our panel. So if we start with the shortest piece, both of those, top and bottom, are about the same. So let's start with this top one. Peel this off and stick it to the top of our panel, like so. Then take our second piece and line this up with the bottom, but also sort of lining it up with the line, just in case we want to use a skinny piece of paper to cover this. We don't want one piece sticking out much further than the other. It's going to make it harder to cover it neatly. So we're going to stick that right up against there. And then third and final piece, and again we know, actually in this case, I think maybe I had actually pinched a piece off of one of these, maybe, because there's actually only one line left on this one rather than the 2 lines. So I'm just going to sacrifice that line. I don't really need to save that, just one word there. So I'm going to peel the backing off of this one and then place this into position as well. So we've now got our gorgeous scripty writing just on that one side of this card, and we can trim off the excess again. It's also good to trim if you really do have like a tiny sliver that's overhanging rather than a piece that you can actually fold round as well. Okay, so we can get rid of all of these backing pieces, or if you keep these backing pieces, they're great for like pre-making your Nuvo drops, or using if you've taken the foam tape backing off of something and then you decide you don't need to use it yet, you could use this to put on the back of it to stop it from sticking to things as well. So you can also make use of those. So the next thing with these is the dragonflies. So I took this patterned paper, and the great thing about this pad is you get 4 of each design, so you don't have to be too frugal about fussy cutting things out and maybe not using them the way that they're intended on the patterned paper. Because you have so many of them, you can really use them in whatever way you want to. So for my original, I used these 2 down here, and I fussy cut them out and added them onto my card. So let's just trim out sort of close to the edges to begin with, and we can trim this extra piece off, and you can definitely make use of these pieces. Now I didn't bother cutting the legs out because they're so fine, you really don't need the legs on a dragonfly. They look brilliant on the backing paper, but if you're cutting them out, it's not quite so nice to try and fussy cut around them. So this could now be used as a gorgeous floral piece as well, and I still have the leftovers from last time too, or you could use the back as well. But for the main card, I'm going to go with the same 2 dragonflies again because I really like that layout on my art journal page. And so you're going to have all of these little scraps here that you can use that have beautiful florals in for other projects as well. Get some of your paper punches on those, or small circle or square dies or postage stamps and things, and create some fun backgrounds with them as well. So for my original, I had these 2 dragonflies positioned like that. Then I still have these 2 dragonflies. I must have used this one on another project, but I still have these 2 dragonflies on this scrap of the paper as well. So I don't know whether we're going to need, like how many dragonflies we're going to need on this project, but I'm definitely thinking this one. Definitely 1 dragonfly, and we could even use the other ones on here as well. Now this one hasn't got its full tail because it's going into the flowers, but that doesn't really matter unless it just has a smaller tail. It could just have a smaller tail or a smaller body. So we could even use the same one from this paper as well actually, and have 2 of them with that smaller body, and then 1 with the longer body as well. So we could do 3 dragonflies on this card, maybe even just straight up and down like that, and then have the paper. You may not even need the strip of paper. They might actually hide it enough, to be honest. Or we could use some of the other PET tapes. Anyway, either way, it's going to be brilliant. So I'm going to fussy cut these out now. Let's do this one together, and then I'll do the others off camera, just so you can see how easy it is to fussy cut around these. And I'm going right up to the image. I'm not leaving any border, so I'm just cutting right up against the outline of the dragonfly, and I'm snipping off the legs and the antennae as well. I don't mind if I haven't got those on the image. I'm not going to add them back on later, but I mean, I feel like your imagination just fills in those bits and pieces if they are missing on an insect. So I'm just going to cut as close to the wings as I can without cutting into them, just following along the outermost line of them, and just carefully following along. I love the detail in them as well. They look like crazed tiles. They're really beautiful. I mean, they look absolutely gorgeous as they are within a floral cluster, but it is nice to be able to alter your papers and use them however you want to as well, whatever works better for whatever project you're working on. And because you have 4 sheets of them, you can use them in all sorts of different ways as well. You could even use 2 sheets and like decoupage the dragonfly up with some 3D foam on top of a cluster for another card as well, you know. So just keep going around the edge. It's not too difficult to do. I mean, I'm doing this while I'm talking as well, so it's not too tricky to cut out, and it looks so effective when you do cut them out. Okay, nearly done. Just got to do the body. And I'm not particularly going in and out everywhere with high detail along that body anyway. I'm kind of just sort of rounding it off as I go as well. So we've now got our first dragonfly there, and I'm just going to fussy cut out all of the others in the exact same way. Okay, so we've got all of our elements fussy cut now, so we're going to do 3 dragonflies on this card, and then the 2 big dragonflies on this card. And then within this paper pack you've got the full sheet that gives you all sorts of different like sayings and sentiments that'd be great for your journaling, for your card making, for your scrapbooking, whatever you like to do. And they're not like, each rectangle that cuts out isn't a full phrase, it's kind of like 2 to 3 within there. So go with the flow, I think, is a really lovely sentiment to give somebody on a card. So possibly go with the flow on the triple ones. We've also got random thoughts, a little magic, today's mood, making memories, bits and pieces, pure happiness, smiles all round, lovely little moments, dreamy days, right here, this moment. Which other ones do we think? Just because, happy moments, small joys, sweet days, so much fun. I think I'm going to go with the random thoughts. I quite like random thoughts, pure happiness as some kind of sentiment for this card. Random thoughts, pure happiness. Yeah, I'm going to lay it out differently to how I did on the art journal page. This one I snipped it into individual words and then matted them onto black cardstock. But I quite like it like that. Then we've just got to decide, are we going to cover that seam with paper and are we going to add a patterned paper piece onto this one, or are we going to use some more of the Kiss Cut PET tape to kind of disguise the join between them? I'm not sure which pieces of paper. We kind of want something that has this creamy colour in, but a lot of the papers, they're sort of, the creamy colour is within something else, which I'm not sure we're going to be able to trim out nicely. This one worked really well because I had this little strip from this side of the paper left over, which I used to then tie the colours in, but this just by itself doesn't necessarily go with the rest of the card, and I quite like it without, actually. So I think let's try and get the Kiss Cut elements to kind of disguise this part. And I mean, we've got a few of them ready here because of snipping them off to get the more continuous kind of pieces on here as well. So let's move those out of the way and let's do maybe this one here that can cover this kind of larger seam. Okay, then could we run that way? Would that look weird? I don't think it would look that weird if we ran that up in that direction. It looks kind of deliberately collagey to do that. And then we could just snip off 2 numbers, 50 or 16. We could just snip around and add 2 individual numbers just to do that kind of seam element there, and then it just sort of looks more like a collagey kind of background. And it could even be for a 16-year-old's birthday if we weren't going to cover up part of that with a dragonfly. But that could be how you do it, and we can also hide the seam more by adding the dragonflies over the seam as well. And then do we do the sentiment, go with the flow like that, maybe in the middle of 2 of the dragonflies. I like that. Okay, and then I mean, technically we don't need to really hide any seams on this one because it is only the long seams, but we could bring in some of the other pieces on this just to kind of accent, you know, and add in an extra element. So I'm feeling like we could save that 2378 piece for something, and we could use the 4590 on there, just to add those extra details, because the PET tape goes really nicely over the top of more PET tape. It kind of almost disappears that outside edge of it. And then I think ABC up here would look really good as well, like that. Then I think I will actually trim those little pips off of here that were holding it into the paper, and then I'm going to mount all of these sentiments onto black and trim around them, leaving a little skinny border, because I love doing that, and I did that with the individual words on the journal page version of this card. And then I feel like this card, it needs a little bit more of that beige colour, because the sentiments are kind of on this almost beigey kind of colour. This one only has the one sentiment, and I feel like it needs some of the more beige up here, so we're going to find an ink that is a similar colour, and we're going to do a bit of splatter up there. I think that would work nicely. So first of all though, we're going to stick these sentiments onto here, and then we'll trim around to give a narrow border. And then an ink that matches this. I don't know if pumice stone might be the right colour actually. Maybe. Let's just test that on a piece of scrap card. I don't know if it's a bit too dark. Frayed burlap. Maybe that's a bit too brown. Old paper. Maybe a mixture with old paper and a little bit of pumice stone mixed together would make a nice kind of colour. Okay, so let's do mostly old paper with a little bit of pumice stone, and then we can add a little bit of water and get a little paintbrush, mix that up. Ah, that's more of the colour. Perfect. There we go. Okay, and then move this all out of the way and then splatter. Just need something else on this side of the card to balance it. Now, we can't really splatter on this side with something water-based because we've put the PET tape over there. It's not going to dry on there, it'll just wipe off. You could have, if you thought about it beforehand, maybe done some splatter, let it dry, then put the tape on. That would have worked. But for this, I think it just needs it on that side of the card because it's going to balance the sentiment then as well. Okay, so I think all we've got left to do now is add our wording and our beautiful dragonflies onto our cards. So I'm going to go with a short-bodied dragonfly, a long-bodied one, I think the wording, and then a short-bodied one again on this card. And that splatter, I don't know if you can really see it up there. You could just about see it. It just ties in that little bit of an off-white colour from this gorgeous sentiment on here as well. I mean, if you had a sheet of paper, maybe from one of the other Arden collections that's more plain and is more of that off-white kind of a colour, you could have used that in the background and then just stuck the tape onto that as well. So that's another way that you can also do it. But for this one, I'm going to take the dragonflies, just sticking glue on their bodies, and I'm going to stick that down like so, and then the second one like this, and then I think I'm going to stick that on with some 3D foam. I'm just going to take a 1mm depth, not too high, of a foam tape, trim that down so it'll fit nicely. and then add that across that seam to hide that completely. And then we can add our other short body dragonfly. And because we've used wet glue and it's onto the PET tape, if anything's a little bit wonky, you can still move it, because the glue is still a little bit wet against the PET tape. Okay, so we've now got those 3 beautiful dragonflies on there, and then this one, again, we'll use glue just to stick the body down so the wings are free. On my art journal I did stick down the wings as well, just so they don't like get torn if you're flipping through the art journal, but on a card it's nice to have them loose. Okay, and then we can put these ones on first with a bit of 3D foam again. So we've got random thoughts, and then we've got pure happiness. Okay, and then the second dragonfly, probably about there, I think. And then because the wing is loose, it doesn't matter if it's overlapping the sentiment, because if you can't quite read it, you can always move the wing out of the way. Okay, then I'm going to add these onto some white card blanks. Okay, and then I've got these kind of like neutral coloured sequins in my stash, and I'm just thinking maybe some of those would look quite nice. They kind of go with that off-white kind of a colour, and we could just add a little scattering of sequins. Not really something that I tend to do in my art journal, because obviously you're closing it all the time, and you know, they could sort of ping off and stuff if they hit something that's on the other side of the page. But on a card they look brilliant. So just a little scattering of these kind of neutral colours. Maybe one more tiny one. I think that looks good. That just sort of adds with that splattering as well that's on there. And then a few on this one as well, I think. And I mean, you can use anything from your stash to do this kind of thing. It can be gems, it can be sequins, it can be pearls, it can be nouveau drops, you know, whatever you have in your stash. Even some of the Arden enamel dots, you might find some that are the right colour. Perhaps even if you wanted to go more white rather than off-white, there is white ones in one of the Christmas collections from last year as well. There were some lovely white drops in there. So I'm going to go 5 on that one, and then I've got 7 on that one. Okay, so there we have 2 cards that are based on an art journal page that I created using the Dragonfly Dreams collection from Textures, and mostly focusing on the 6x8 paper pad with also the laser cut kind of elements within there, and also the PET tape, which has kind of a mixture of continuous and kiss cut elements in there. Whereas in the journal I had only used the continuous pieces, and actually the kiss cut elements I'd used on the opposite page. I did end up putting some of the kiss cut ones onto this background to kind of tie everything together, and we also used them on this one to kind of hide some of the joins on there as well. So really hope you enjoyed this video, and possibly seeing a different way to use any of your PET tapes from Arden as well. Lots of them could do this background kind of technique too. So really hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Bye!